just for a message for the White Hats out there, Wade does not want a show. Does not want to go to the underground base and see what you got.
Yeah, the brave. No, I know a few people that would probably like to go do that.
They jump at it, sure.
It would be worthy audience, you know. But yeah, not everybody gets one of those. That's for sure.
I think you said before that once you get to the point where your whatever you're doing is important enough that they give you a show, you're also important enough that you could be, you know, taken out.
Oh, that comes with that. Absolutely. That's that territory. And in fact, when I was with Dennis back 96, 97, I'll tell you, all of the different players, because Dennis put, 5,000 people into a sports stadium talk about free energy. And then we were, meeting at the White House with Al Gore, this stuff. And over the years, as I realized all the different parties and interests and stuff that were like focused on us and messing with us and trying to get an angle on us, it was like, it was bewildering to realize all the interests that were at play there. And so, yes, if you start playing at those kind of levels, you get a lot of interest. And yes, it's hostile interest a lot. And then there's also interest of trying to stop you, but also interest trying to capitalize on it. And again, it's this three-ring circus. In fact, three-ring circus doesn't
the greed factor is pretty big.
Awesome. Off the scale. Absolutely.
Once they can figure out a way to translate off of oil and gas and make billions and billions of dollars off of supposed free energy.
No, quadrillions of dollars.
Yeah, quadrillions. Then you'll see them lining up.
Oh yeah, and
but that's the problem. How there's got to be a way to make money on free energy.
But the U.S. can get out of debt maybe by then, no?
Yeah.
They can buy back their country. Hey.
From China.
Yeah, that's one of the, in fact, anybody who's been in the field very long, definitely the gold rush effect is one of the most damaging ones. And hardly any effort really, they all get scathed by that, by the gold rush effect. If you get close, oh yes, the sharks just come swarming.
I'll take a show. Tom, would you go with me?
Definitely.
Underground base? Yeah. we could tell you, but we might have to kill you. You'll be right on it?
I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I'm crazy. I'll go for it.
Sure. We'll call you up and tell you about it, Wade.
You could actually probably like run an ad somewhere, in the paper, say,
yeah,
come and pick me up, please.
We'll go.
We'll go. Yeah. We're not actually free energy inventors or anything. We just want the show.
Hey, you got a show?
I've been trying to get an alien to land in my backyard for 35 years. I put my time in. I've been in the UFO field. Tom, you've been in the UFO field longer than I have. You would think by now, just out of appreciation for the time that we put in.
So you're telling me you're worthy. I get it.
I'm worthy. They should show up. We put our time in. Come on. Give us a visit.
I hear what you're saying, And
I might take a few pictures,
I gotcha.
Me and an alien surfing.
Yep. Right? And for the underground show, I have to say, in my case, I'm not worthy. Okay. And that's kind of where I am. I don't think I'm worthy.
You've heard it here, folks.
Yes. The people who get those shows, that's what I'm saying. Not many even survive long enough to get to that stage.
Right.
So it's quite an adventure. Absolutely.
But it seems to me, though, that just like I was talking to another gentleman tonight, I said a lot of the things that happen, not only never mind in free energy or in any area right now, is that it seems to be concentrated, in the American being the head of everything, or the chiefy whiffy of everything.
Yep.
Just recently, right, in the UFO community or UFO field, right, numerous countries had come out with information on their UFO, like they released files from, government files.
Absolutely.
Like New Zealand did it, Ecuador did it,
yep.
Numerous countries like that. You know what? Yep. Nobody gave a damn. Nobody even made a fuss or a muss or anything, right?
I hear you.
Tomorrow, right, some guy comes out and says, oh, I was in the army or someplace, and you know, I know inside information, and he's put on the pedestal and like he is the greatest guy since, you know, since sliced bread. It's because you know he lives in a country where, you know, you can go and make a big noise because you have the ability to do so, right? Okay. And it seems to me a lot of times that we focus in North America, at least, in too much of that. You know, there is so much stuff out there that we don't know of. Matter of fact, Americans don't know a whole lot about anybody else, or maybe they don't care to, for the, you know, because of the style of how you know, America works, right? But
yes,
if there is probably just as much, right, just as much people out there in other countries doing similar type of work, right? How come we don't get to hear it? And guys like yourself who have been in this game for a long time, right? You guys would know who these characters might be out there in other places as well that may have been able to come up with whatever.
So I hear what you're saying, and again, I personally don't keep up, okay, on this stuff as much. I mean, I can't help but be aware of a lot of this because in the circles I run in. Right. But like Brian O'Leary, like again, I will defer to Brian on this. I mean, like for instance, there was what was his name, Marinoff. So this was a German guy who ended up, you know, leaping from the top of the university library, you know, backwards, you know, here a few years ago. Brian knew him. No, you get bumped off in other countries too. And however, I know that Brian, who has trotted the globe for many years, he started doing this back in the about 20 years ago. That's when he started a really, again, getting involved in the free energy and investigation and literally traveling the world many times. I've heard him say it. He goes, yes, the invention and the suppression, United States that's where it's happening. And so all I can say is this is what Brian said, and Brian probably has a different perspective than I do on the why. And I am giving my opinion on what I've seen when I was involved in this field. And again, I'm really not on the ground like I used to be. So that was just my opinion, and it could be wrong. Okay.
Well,
but
I think maybe they're not, possibly they're not called global controllers. Maybe they're called global controllers for a reason.
No, that's not the point I was trying to make. The point I was trying to make was that, you know, for the most part, like in whether we're in the UFO field, the energy field, or anything else for that matter, we tend to always hear the same names popping up, right?
Right.
I'm sure there's other folks out there that do probably just as much work, and if not more so, right, and in the same areas as we do,
and
right?
We don't get the press.
But we don't get to hear it because we seem to concentrate in our own little, you know, backyard here, and we always, you know, hear the same names, you know, like Greer and these guys, you know. And
yeah, I think so. You know, oh boy.
I think it's coming. I think it's coming out a little bit, but not much. A video came out. Tom, what was the guy in Brazil? It was the guy in Brazil, was it? Who came out with they talked to the president of the country.
It was Bolivia.
Bolivia. Yeah. He talked to the president of the company.
Ecuador, New Zealand, you know, all these guys, all these countries came out with all their information. Does any of the CNNs or anybody say anything about it? No.
No, you can watch a YouTube video on it that's been translated into English. But you won't see it on the next, UFO hunters.
I hear you. So,
you won't, because it's not American. It's not.
I hear you.
It's just a beef we have about the worldwide thing that's happening. But
everything happens around America. If it ain't America,
it's again we have, how to say it. Let me give you an example. And in fact, I'm going to get out of the energy field for a minute and just talk about the medical field. It's a very similar suppression dynamic. But Brian O'Leary, in fact, he's publicly even trying to do this. And again, this is the United States is infamous for this. They did it in Mexico a lot, but it's the first time I heard they actually did it in Ecuador, where a guy named Greg Catton, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, alternative medicine practitioner, deals with cancer. It sounded kind of like Hoxie's paste, but anyway, Brian, for instance, had a skin cancer, and he was gonna. The recommendation was to go and get it cut off or whatever. And Greg, he visited Brian there in his place in Vilcabamba, and Greg cured him. Mm. And Greg was actually kidnapped in Ecuador and put on a plane, and he's sitting in a U.S. prison today. Okay, and the FDA had him kidnapped and brought back to the United States. Mm. And so, that's just an example of the long arm of the apparatus in the United States. And and I know, and again, I'm not a UFO guy, okay, but you guys are into it. You guys are, I'll call you experts, my understanding, and again, I'm going back 20 some years now, but I thought that the UFO control mechanism was kind of headquartered in the U.S. Wasn't it that way a long time ago?
Well, I mean, you sort of think that's the way it seems, right? Only because, all the stories that seem to flow around, even on the worldwide scale, had always been, based on pretty much, let's say, North America or United States. It's not like for instance, now you go on the internet, and who are always the big shots, right? The big shots are always North Americans, right? Mm-hmm. They're not. I'm sure there's as many Germans and British and French and whatever, but nobody ever hears of those guys.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and again. Brian can speak to this. I mean, again, Brian, I would look to Brian on this, but I know Brian has mixed it up. I mean, he was in a conference in Barcelona in 2009, I believe. Brian really is a globetrotter, and he's interacted with the international free energy community, and I mean, he's been there, and my perception of what Brian has said about this is that, most of the people that are trying to do this stuff are in the United States, and most of the suppression activities are happening in the United States. It doesn't mean it's not happening in other places, and in fact it does, but it's for some reason, and again, I have a feeling it's because we're the biggest, richest country, and there's more people trying to do it.
I beg to differ on that one too.
Okay, that's fine.
You guys are not the richest country anymore. China is now.
Well,
that's new to you.
I'll tell you what. I would say the average person in the world thinks that they would probably be economically, individually better off living here than in Shanghai.
Well, that may be so, but not for long, probably.
Oh, we're declining. I mean, if you're familiar with my work, I have a 250-page essay on the American Empire, and how we're, at this point we're in our decline, So no, I get that.
Right now, if we were to look in the world economics, I think America right now is owned by China, basically.
Well, they own $1 trillion of our federal debt, and
At
so.
Least. And not to mention how much physical resources that from iron to whatever else.
Yeah, well, energy is the big one always, and so but no, I hear you. No, sure, and so the United States is definitely a declining empire. It's been that way. In fact, my work, I go into quite a bit of depth on this, and I will more in the future. But the United States, in its first energy crisis in 1973, that is when real wages per hour also peaked. Okay, and they have been stagnant ever since. And so I would say that the United States has been in economic decline pretty much most of my lifetime, and again, we've had the internet and some high-tech things happening, but energy consumption per capita, that is the number one indicator of the wealth of any country, and the United States is still consumes more energy than any other nation on Earth per capita, you know, and again, and we have 300 million people that are doing that. And so again, 25% of the world's energy gets consumed in the United States. And I'm saying it's,
no doubt.
Yeah, so anyway, we're still, yeah, I hear what you're saying. The wheels are coming off and, you know, but it's the thing where, as long as we have a huge military presence in the Middle East,
that's about the only thing.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and so no, I'm not gonna defend. You're familiar with my work. The last thing I'm doing is trying to defend the American flag, you know. And so anyway, I hear what you're saying, and your question though about so why is it where the United States is this way? That's my guess, okay, and I think it's probably close to the truth, but again, other people keep up on it more than I do. And all I'm saying was when I was in the game, this was where it was happening. And again, I remember back again 25 years ago. And again, people are, I mean, when you're getting the snot kicked out of you in the U.S., I mean, the natural impulse is, gee, what country can we go to where we can do this unmolested? Right. And the answer I have is, there is nowhere to go. Okay, it is a truly global reach. Well, and again, Brian can tell you about dead free energy inventors in a lot of the countries besides the United States. And so it's a global phenomena. But again, the United States though is where you have more pesky inventors and engineers, okay, than you have anywhere else. And so that's my opinion on why you've seen more of that happen in the United States. Now, I mean, I don't know, what you're thinking, but I suppose that people can think that there's a dog and pony show happening with a lot of the big names of free energy, and they're really, they're not who they appear to be in these kinds.
That sort of crossed my mind.
Well, I hear you're saying, and there are, how to say it, that could be happening, so I'll tell you what, I mean, the big name, and I'm not going to name names, but in this field, the large names in this field, definitely, and I've heard it, and I've been in the room with people saying, so-and-so, is he real? Or is he really on a special assignment? And there's that kind of suspicion that is there, and you know what? Maybe so. And in fact, I think, how to say it, I personally, I don't try to get too conspiratorial minded about that, but there is definitely a lot of disinformation, okay, a ton of disinformation in many different ways. And so there's possible that very sincere, in fact, this is well known. I mean, where you're a really sincere, person who's really going to try to do it, and you end up sort of being led down the path of you're never going to be productive because there are people who are, they are not who they appear, and you are being led down the path of not being productive. And you got to be careful who your friends and allies are, obviously, in this field, because yes, there are people who definitely are not who they appear to be. And in fact, we got infiltrated by some. I mean, there are people that we had professional provocateurs infiltrate our organizations, and they would strike when the time was right, which is when you were most vulnerable, is when they would strike. However, it is difficult to distinguish the provocateurs from the just real greedy capitalist Shark Tank people too. And so that's the thing where in the end, you're kind of going, was that guy on the payroll or was he not? And in fact, there are some people I know were on the payroll. Some people I'm not sure were on the payroll. And in fact, here's one of the interesting things that I've discovered over the years is that the people doing the people who are actually provocateurs that are on the payroll, this is kind of and in fact it's not even contract CIA stuff, although it's related to that. But once these people do their dirty work, they don't live on the Riviera afterward. I mean, it's not like they get, they offered us $1 billion to go away, but it's not like that the hitmen got $1 million each. It's something to where they end up, what I've seen this. In fact, the guy who really took his mask off and took us down to Ventura when Dennis was in jail, he's in prison today. He was involved in a Mormon scam 20 years later, and he's probably never going to live to see outside of the bars. And I have a feeling that if he was a paid provocateur, eventually he got, furloughed, and he had to make it on his own his own talent, and
Yeah.
so he ended up being involved in other scams, and well, that time he ended up going to prison, and so and in fact, the guy who was the hitman in Seattle, when he was developing his credentials and afterwards, he's got these signature moves of using the legal system as a weapon, and it's kind of like, but anyway, I think today he's freelancing. He's not doing it necessarily on the payroll, although he posed as a Tesla researcher after he got done with his Seattle work, and so, yeah, you see him. And in fact, I remember, I think Gary Vesterman, in fact, I remember this is like 15 years ago. He was at one of these, new science conferences, and then that's a pretty famous article. And it was like, there were like, I forget how many CIA guys were there. It was a bunch. And the CIA guys are not the guys who are really the agents, really. I mean, again, the people really running the show, it's privatized. It's not government employees that are really...
The CIA agents are taking notes.
Yeah, the CIA is taking notes, exactly. The people who are the ones you really got to look out for, they're not on the CIA payroll, and so again, this CIA guy who offered Dennis the money, he was an errand boy, but, and in fact, I doubt he even knows who, gave him the mission. I don't know, it's compartmentalized and stuff, and so,
Okay, so
anyway, and that's all that cloak and dagger stuff, and it's real. I mean, it happens, and it's like, and if you start playing high enough, you will encounter them, and it's a thing where, but at the same time, it's hard to know who's who in the zoo. I mean, it's not easy. They don't, hand you your business card like, hey, I work for, it doesn't work that way, and so.
I want to ask you like a straight up question now.
Uh-huh.
Do you think, or in without naming names, of course, right? Any of the big boys that we're talking about, right now, are playing a show?
What do you mean big boys? You mean the big names in free energy?
Yes.
Okay, what about them?
I said, do you think any of them are playing this pony show right now?
They're actually not who they appear to be.
Or doing it for different reasons, for
different reasons, and actually
for their own pockets or for their own.
Oh my God! So the thing is that each one of us, every day I go to bed and I wonder what my motivation is. Why do I do what I do? And when I'll tell you the perils of playing the free energy game, I have. Oh my God, the delusions of grandeur. So there was one pretty famous free energy person who actually thought they were the second coming. They thought they were Jesus Christ come back again, and that's the perils of playing this game is that stuff can, I've seen a lot of contenders fall by the wayside, and so in order to play at those high levels, it's quite a process to get there. And so I think, how to say it, we're all wounded. I mean,
we all have egos.
We all have egos. We're all wounded, and some people, in fact, Ed Greer, in one of his books, he talked about when he was hanging out with Lawrence Rockefeller, and Rockefeller had his, so-called entourage around him, and it was pretty evident that he was surrounded with people who would make sure that he never did anything too productive, that he pretty much was, played philosopher king and contemplated his navel, but that he was never going to get to where he became a problem and had to be dealt with. And so again, I said it's a very subtle, it's a science, and that's the thing where Bearden knows a lot more about this than I do, and he's talked about game theory and the way they do this. And in fact, what I've seen, that's what I'm saying, and Bearden, he does, like, he makes mistakes in his presentations of the physics, etc. And this is well known, right? And it's like, is he doing that deliberately to protect people, or I don't know what the answer is, but when he describes to me the sting operation almost got him, and I realized at the same time that he was probably getting that, we were getting a similar one, Tom all of a sudden got a lot of cred with me. It's like going, oh, and again, I didn't figure it out till 10 years later, but it's just like, okay, wow. And so I don't know. The answer is, and all I'll say is that I know that at those levels, people look at each other with a critical eye, and they wonder, and they want to make sure that they're real, and make sure that they're, trying to. Again, it's hard
to guess what people's motivations are.
That's what I'm saying. It's hard to.
If you don't know them personally, how are you going to guess their motivations? Sometimes, most of the time, we don't even know our own.
That's what I'm saying. I go to bed every night. I wonder what my motivation is. All I'm saying is that at those levels, each person, I mean, again, it's just difficult. And that's what I'm saying. Even the provocateurs, you're wondering, was he doing that as part of his job description, or was he just greedy? You know, I mean, and you don't know, you know, and that's the thing where it's difficult, you know, and for me, the way I deal with a lot of that is when I see them, in fact, one of the leading skeptics, I know he's dishonest. Is he being dishonest because it's his ego, or is he being dishonest because he's on the payroll? I don't know, and you know what? I'm not sure it matters. You know, and so it's a thing where
the point is you can pick up on the dishonesty.
Yeah.
Where that dishonesty is coming from is for somebody else to figure out.
That's absolutely, you don't know, and so that's the thing where, and I will say this. I don't get too biblical here, but many are called and few are chosen. I mean, it's like very few aspirants ever get to the level where that the big guys take them seriously. Very few. I mean, it's very few that actually get really taken seriously. There's a lot of pretenders who want to be contenders, but most people don't have what it takes to do that, because you literally have to sacrifice your life to get to where you're playing at those levels. I mean, the people that I know that are playing at these levels, they figure they're going to die. They pretty much have just figured that they're going to die, you know, and they're just kind of going, you know, but maybe I'll get some good work done before my day comes. I mean, and I know people that are doing it, and that's the way they look at it. And I just, you know, you got to stand there in awe and see that, but that's where they are. And so, no, anybody who's playing at those high levels, you are risking your life. And anybody who's playing at those high levels that has any clue knows that you are risking, and you're risking your life in many ways. It's not just that you're going to get snuffed out. It's just that, oh my God, it's just like, oh my God, I've been there. It's like, it's your allies become, actually, they hurt you more. I mean, that's the crazy part, you know, like in Ventura, when the sledgehammer comes down, I mean, it's like, yeah, you're suffering from the big, in fact, Dennis, in Ventura in Seattle, his company got stolen when, again, they had him in a headlock. So they get you in a headlock, and that's when your friends see their opportunity to steal it all, you know, and that's the, you know, that's the, anybody who's played at those levels knows exactly what I'm talking about, you know, and so it's difficult. It's very difficult to mount an effort with enough of the people, the right stuff, you know. And in fact, I've in Ventura, when the dust settled, I realized that if there were 50 people like the few of us who supported Dennis and some of the inventors, there were 50 of us who would have stood firm, we might have had a chance. If there were 100 of us, it would have been easy. But there were 2 of us, you know, and it's just like,
out of all the people that didn't just turn their back or walk away, and the ones that attack you, that come up and see a vulnerability and time to get in there, you can go down the list and out of the 200 people you knew, 2 people stand up and say, I'll give you a hand with that, no problem. Yeah, I'm willing to put my life on the line.
Well, and it's numbers like that, you know, and so it's
that's pretty standard, I think.
Well, then that's what that was my big lesson. In fact, the biggest lesson I realized, and this is something that is not a popular realization, but and everybody who's played at this level knows exactly what I'm talking about. Personal integrity is the world's scarcest commodity, and you don't get to find out what you're made out of, really, until you're putting it on the line. And you don't really get to find out what the people around you are made of until they're putting it on the line. And that's when you really find out. And I've met some diamonds, okay? But it's about, I mean, you don't find diamonds very many places. I found a few, and they've been pressure tested. But you know what? The people who have passed the test at that level, a number of them are dead. You know, it's like passing the test at that level quite often costs you your life. And so that's part of the problem.
Yeah, and there's also you have to take the human personality into consideration here. And there's certain ways you deal with certain personalities. There are some people that if you approach them with a threat, they will go all out at that point. They're the type of personality that if you threaten them, that's it. They're going to do it. Now they're going to do it for real. Now all the stops are being pulled out because you threatened them. It's a personal. It's the paladin mentality. They turn into paladins. They have to now do it as a quest, as a goal, the holy grail.
Absolutely.
And then there's other personalities. Now, you can't come at those people with aggression or threats. You have to find a different way to handle those people.
Absolutely.
And there's other people, if you're an intelligence gatherer, that that money will be the way you approach a person. That if you set down, I think Bearden ran into this. There was a guy showed up at the door and to one of the people, inventors that he knew personally, and set down 2 cases, one with $5 million, the other one with $5 million. The guy calmly said, "Here's the deal. You're going to come work for us. I'm going to give you this. There's $5 million in each of these cages. I'm going to give this to you now. It's tax-free, completely tax-free, and it's yours to do with as you please. We're going to give this to you, and you're going to come work for us. Your invention will not go to waste. We will be using your invention, and you will be paid a yearly stipend to manage it and come check on it, and anything upgrades you want to do to it, that's fine as well. But you're now working with us." That's option 1. Option 2 is we have a couple gentlemen in the car waiting at your kid's school.
I have a section of my adventure site and the title. In fact, it's sort of it's a phrase I see used now. They make you an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah. What option do you think he took?
Well, and again, when I heard Bearden talking in 1998, he talked about a friend of his who sort of, again, kind of disappeared from the scene, and Bearden figured that he was made the offer he couldn't refuse. You know, and so
took the money and ran, and just maintained took the money, took the yearly income, and went, okay, good, I'm good, I'm set for life now.
Yeah, if you're the average person like most of us. And again, somebody says, "Hey, how about $10 million to go away?" That's a life-changing sum of money. What I found, and this is I write about it in Ventura, there are some rich people who've poked their nose into this, and one came to our facility who was worth like $400 million or something, and he had a windmill farm in Arizona or whatever. And when you're worth $400 million, how do you bribe a guy with $400? So they just go straight to the stick. So your whole thing of the suitcase of cash or that, well, they just forget the suitcase of cash. Your family will be dead by dawn unless you stop tonight. And so that's another offer that, in fact, this guy, he told us, he came to our facility in a limo, and he said, when they told me, because he had sunk about like $35 million, which was like 9% of his net worth into this facility. And he was told that, here's the deal, you're going to leave and never come back or your family will be dead by dawn. What's it going to be? And the guy hangs up the phone, and again, they made it clear that they could deliver, right? And so he banged in his numbers, and it was like 9% of his net worth was invested in this whole hobby he had of doing this facility. And he said, it's not worth it. And he packed up his briefcase, and he walked out, and he never looked back. And he came to our facility and said, because we were flying pretty high back then, and he said, "I wish you the best, but you have no idea what you're up against." Yeah. And you know what? He was absolutely right.
He just came in to say, "Yeah, you're doing great work. Good luck with that."
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a year later, it was less than a year later, Dennis was in jail with $1 million bail, and we were completely wiped out. Yeah. So anyway, it was educational. Absolutely. So.
Well, it's been great. And
this was, I wasn't sure how this conversation would go, but you know what? I'm glad we had this conversation. This was stuff that, for me, I hope that any aspirants in the free energy field listen, because this is not knowledge that was easily garnered.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the show again, Wade. I appreciate having you.
Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. If anybody wants to check out Wade's website, it's www.ahealedplanet.net, and you can check out the archive of Wade's show at www.Spectrum Radio Network, and just click on the archives button or the past shows button, and you can hear Wade's not only this show, but you can hear his previous show with us, where he went into a lot more detail on his adventures in the early days. Today was more of a technical approach and getting more details on some of the technologies that were out in the past and hopefully we're going to have in the future if we can get the big boys out of the way. Or I don't know if we really have to get them out of the way. Do we wait? Do we just have to wait for them to open up to the point where...
I pray for their souls and that they come to the point of doing what they think is the right thing. Yeah. That's what I do, yeah.
And I've said this before. I think humans have to go to space. Just like we have to go deeper and deeper into the oceans. We have to go and explore areas on our planet that we've never been before. We have to go to space. And those technologies, just anti-gravity alone is going to help tremendously for that endeavor. So I think that they were going to get to the point where we just have to openly go to space. And I'm not saying there's not an effort now that's being done in the Black Ops community, say, that's exploring. And while we're running around in 747s, they're perhaps in more advanced technology out there, flying around space. But as a global community, I think humans definitely have to get that it's just part of the human nature to explore. And that's the area I think we got to go next. I think that's part of it.
Yeah. I don't think Star Trek's that fictional.
I don't think so. I think a lot of that's going on now.
I think so too.
Thanks again, Wade.
Thank you very much, guys.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Have a great night.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.